But state senators have adjourned the special called session for redistricting by Governor Henry McMaster and have gone home. The reason, they say it's just too late, as we saw record numbers of South Carolinians coming out on the first day of early voting. Senators spent about 3 hours here at the State House before it started to become clear that support for redistricting was beginning to dry up. Republicans who once backed redistricting began switching sides as those record-setting early vote totals rolled in. Senator Richard Cash, one of the Senate's more conservative Republicans, became the first to publicly flip. Cash said in good conscience he couldn't change the rules of a game already in progress. Senators later voted to carry the bill to next session, effectively killing it this year. At a press conference afterwards, Democrats thanked voters for the record-setting turnout on this first day of early voting, saying it showed South Carolina stands up for itself. Majority Leader Shane Massey admitted the record turnout played a role in senators making up their minds. Massey added the vote was not a rebuke of President Trump or the Republican Party, but simply the process was too rushed. We will hear from some of those key Democrats and key Republicans ahead at 5 and the pivotal moment that helped take us to where we are right now. But for now, reporting at the State House, Stephen Biddix, WIS News 10.